Thank you. So we're moving to item 10, which is the 1920 funding summary for the Arts Event Fund and the Creative Communities scheme, which is going to be presented by Joanne Ransom. Thank you, Joanne. Over to you.
Thank you. The purpose of this paper is to provide an update on how the Arts Event Fund and Creative Communities Fund were allocated during the 2019-2020 financial year. This is a requirement under the community funding policy. We report successful applicants to council. I'm happy to take the paper as read and answer any questions.
Thank you. So open it up for questions of the elected members. There don't seem to be any general questions. Joanne, can I just ask you to confirm for me the Arts Event Fund is one of the things that's not funded this year?
That is correct.
So the kind of things that were funded in your report, how would those things go ahead this year if they were going to?
So that is an interesting question. So the first one has been delivered. That's the Rangitani Maori Cultural Arts Society event. That has been delivered. The second one, they've deferred that till 22-23 and so chose to give the money back. Now the remaining 4 events have been granted funding but haven't been held yet. So that'll be dependent on how COVID-19 plays out through the year. So at this point, they've retained the funding, and then it will decide whether they can go ahead or not.
So would it be maybe a fair comment to say that we're going to stretch that funding over a couple of years? So 1 year's fund will do us for 2 years because of the COVID situation?
No, I haven't thought
in that way.
I haven't thought along that way at all. And at this point, this was why the Piping and Dancing Association gave the grant back, because they couldn't deliver it within a reasonable time frame. It was just too far out, and they thought they'd reapply later.
And so with this fund, what's the process that comes back into our funding round? Is that just through the LTP? Will it just be picked up as normal? How will we refund or decide whether we're going to do this fund again?
So my understanding is that we will come through the LTP process with this, and you'll decide whether that comes back in or not.
Okay.
That is my understanding, but I'm very happy to be corrected.
Nobody looks like they're correcting you. That's fine. Okay. Councillor Johnson, you had a question?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Chair. In terms of the criteria for the Arts Event Fund, can you say how they relate to the strategic direction and goals of council? Because I noted that when you reported back on the community funding last week, it was all about meeting one of the strategic goals of council, whereas this, although some of it is similar, this seems to have its own separate criteria. And I just wondered how that links in, if it does at all, to the strategic direction of council.
So at its highest level, it's that creative and exciting city. So this is about the arts events, is about creating exciting events. There's also a link towards bringing people into the city if it's big enough. So there is a link towards that economic return, which is where that last bullet point comes from. But I apologise, we didn't spell out that strategic connection particularly clearly.
No, but I don't. There's no need for an apology. I'm just checking that there is a sort of a lens over this that makes sure that the criteria for the fund are in sync with the strategic direction. That's all.
Right. Yeah. So that creative and livable strategy is a creative and exciting city goal too. So we know that this arts funding it does contribute to that vibrant and healthy arts sector, which is where that creative communities funding clicks into the sector. And then the funding through creative communities coupled with this arts event funding all contributes to that that high level creative and exciting city. Thank you.
Jo, just to follow up from me, the Creative Communities Scheme funding, 2/3 of that comes from government via Creative New Zealand, and that's population based, yes?
That's correct.
And we know we have some, well, we feel like we have some issues with the population data through the census. Have we had any conversations with Creative New Zealand about that?
I personally don't know of any, but I can find out.
Thank you. I think that's a bigger conversation around funding generally that's population driven. Okay. No further questions. Thank you very much, Joanne. So the recommendation is that the memorandum entitled 1920 Funding Summary presented to Arts, Culture and Heritage be received, which I'm happy to move, seconded by Councillor Dennison, and we'll open for any comments. Say thank you from Council, from this committee specifically, to the community representatives on those funding rounds for the work that they do to administer particularly the Creative Communities Scheme, which is no small feat in itself, being a scheme where the applicants are generally interviewed by a representative of the panel, and then funding is allocated on the basis of the merit of the application. So this isn't one of those that's just prorated out. There is a deep dive into into all of these events, and funding decisions are not made at all lightly, but never go far enough, as you'll see how this fund is always oversubscribed. So I'm pleased that particularly the events fund has been given back a little bit so that we can at least find some ways through with supporting some of those larger events in the future. And I look forward to seeing that come back through the long-term plans. I think it's starting to show that we do have larger scale events that are worth funding in the same way that we fund our larger scale sports events that have potential to attract people to our city and contribute to our goal of being a creative and exciting city to live in. So I'll put that to the vote. We'll check we voted, please. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Move to the last item on the agenda, item 12, which is the committee work schedule. I would like to add an additional report to that agenda, please. Following comments made in Margaret Tennant's presentation this morning about the sesquicentennial programme and the work that elected members will be aware is going on internally in council and through the mayor's office, would like it to request a report on that sesquicentennial programme work come through this committee with its responsibility for commemorative events at a time to be determined with officers. I'm sure they can find a sensible time to do that in the work programme. While we add that as a recommendation, any other comments on the work schedule from the General Manager? Any questions? Councillor Naylor.
Just number 2, the Arts Powerhouse Group work, which the position is that it was covered during long-term plan discussions. I'm just wondering, I can't recall what the direction was that was given in December, but does there need any report back to the committee to close that loop?
Through the chair, I'll comment on that. So what's being worked through the long-term plan is your strategic direction around Arts Powerhouse. There's still a report to come back on the operational activities that are from that particular group. So that it remains on the work schedule. We just need to update the date.
Okay, thank you.
So additional recommendations that a report on the sesquicentennial work programme. It's a tricky word. Be presented to Arts, Culture and Heritage. They're debating on the spelling of centennial at this end of the table, Natalia. We think it's an E. Sesqui, you think it's an E? I think we know what we mean. So I will move those recommendations, seconded by Councillor Barrett, and we'll put those to the vote. Happy to take them together? Excellent. Natalia, this end of the table apologises. You were right the first time. Carried unanimously. Nō reira, na mihi nui kia koutou, e nā mana e nā reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you all. That concludes Arts, Culture and Heritage.